Hi, I want to emphasize caution going forward that this is not one of those happier kinds of games. If you're sensitive to topics like these, then you may want to skip this one, or just take caution and be ready to close the video if you see too much. All I know is that I'm not beating the masochism allegations. Formerly known as Scav Prototype, Casualties Unknown is a 2D survival sim about diving into a hole to accomplish an incredibly hopeless suicide mission for the powers above you. You control a genetic experiment created for the sake of what they describe as unethical testing. Bit of an understatement TBH, but whatever. One day, while trying to transfer some cargo to a different planet, a large amount of stuff gets sent to the wrong coordinates due to a calibration error, including a supposedly very important piece of experimental technology, which now sits at the bottom of a treacherous underground cave system. But instead of sending an extraction team of sorts, they see this as an opportunity to send the XPs to get it back for them for the sake of doing more research, kind of like a morbid way for them to kill two birds with one stone. Except this case is gonna kill a lot more than two birds. There's a lot more lore you can find in these notes and EPDAs, mainly going into the details of the expedition and how the XPs were often mistreated by the scientists that created them. Some notes also give subtle gameplay hints with the world building, and if anything, I do like the little drawings they come with sometimes. This will not be a very lore-focused video though. Every time you start a run, a drop pod falls onto the planet with a new XP. Every run randomizes the layout, trap placement, loot density, enemies, and sometimes each layer has a unique effect added on, like bumping up or down the ambient temperature, or areas being more flooded, just to give a couple examples. Being a demo, the ending isn't implemented yet, but you probably won't be thinking about that as much as you are trying not to die, because it is very easy to die in this game. The core gameplay loop involves trying to reach the bottom of each layer to descend deeper, all while trying not to sustain any major bodily harm. Along the way, you'll scavenge stuff from different kinds of boxes and pods, harvest stuff from the environment for food or resources, dodge hazards that range from questionably obvious to annoyingly well hidden, and even trade with survivors you encounter along the way for more supplies. It's not just about getting them supplied either, you have to actively take care of the XP and know their limits. If they carry too much, they'll tire out faster and be less mobile, but sometimes it's worth being a little over encumbered. If you make them work too hard, they'll get exerted. If you feed them too much of something, they'll get sick. You need to learn when to slow down and take stock, when to drop some things, when it's time to bust out the rare commodity that is life-saving medication. Keeping a good stock of medicine is probably the most important thing compared to any other resource. Unless you are either incredibly patient or just so happen to be a psychic, they are going to get hurt. This game has a really complicated medical system that tracks things like heart rate, brain health, each individual limb's skin and muscle health, radiation, even blood viscosity is a hidden stat that's tracked, and it's all important. If you do not keep these things in relatively nominal conditions, let's just say you probably won't have a very good time. Minus the medical system, it all probably sounds pretty standard for your average survival game. So what makes it different? Well, there isn't really getting around this. This game is dark. When you fall too far or land in a spike trap, your XP will yelp in pain. Take too many painkillers while trying to calm down, they'll OD and probably die, or even worse, develop an opiate addiction. Even when you are prepared, there's always the off chance of something horrible happening, one thing after another, sometimes leading to this cascading effect that dooms your run. I took a leap of faith one time and landed on a mine. Likely story, I'm sure. The wounds were grievous and infected, shrapnel was all over their body, and it took several minutes to get them into a somewhat stable condition. But among their injuries, I missed the fact that they suffered brain damage. Later, they had a seizure while climbing down a ladder and fell onto some rocks, which ended up causing some major internal bleeding. Without a chest drain, we had to continue, and a little later, the blood had built up so much pressure in their chest that it caused their lungs to partially collapse. And then they started puking up blood. You know, I've never had a hemothorax before. I don't think I even knew what that was before playing this game. and now I hope to God I never do. It is going to be disturbing. It will probably make you uncomfortable. If you're like me, your first time experience will be so stressful that it actually forces you to close the game before you even finish the first run, only to crawl back later and start up a new one. It's an oddly fascinating pull this game has. You control the XP, but you're more of a guide for them, telling them what to do and where to go. Emphasized further when the XP is crying out for help or trying to stymie their bleeding. They even throw out an occasional wee from time to time. They disobey actions if their mood is too low. They constantly update you on their status. They'll beg you to let them stop when they get too tired, or for help when they're on the verge of death. I don't think I've played or seen a game whose take on it is as gruesome as this, though. I have an ick with heart-related stuff. But that also leads to the question, why did I come back after getting so thoroughly shook by this game on my first run? Well, I already mentioned the masochism allegations, but to give a real answer, it's the same reason I play horror games, or just difficult games in general. It's mostly for the moment where you come out on top of it. I'd recommend this video if you want a deeper and better analysis on why people like this game in spite of the horrible things that can happen in it, as I am not the type to accurately convey these things well. But if I were to try anyway, I see it more as a means of finding the light at the end of a dark and perilous tunnel, or to put it more technically, a constant test of your nerves, knowledge, and reflexes that you develop by playing the game. As for whether or not a game needs to be this grim to get its point across, well, it depends. I think as long as it's not being condoned or rewarded for getting into these situations, then I don't think it's inherently wrong to have them present. Of course, there's a line between something being out of place or smut and something being artistic or realistic, and it'd be a lot different if the game was giving you a reward of some kind for throwing XPs into a blender, but that's not the case. It's purely something to be avoided. The other reason I bring up is the XP's mood as a mechanic. If you try to kill other survivors for their stuff, or you just generally don't take good care of them, it makes the XP's mood go down, which causes them to start ignoring you, among other much more horrible things. On the opposite axis, Last Stand exists, a buff based on your XP's happiness where they have a chance to resuscitate after suffering what should have been a lethal injury. It is death defiance, and I think that's the game's theme of sorts, trying to find hope in the lowest of circumstances. That wasn't meant to be a pun. It makes you, or I guess me at least, attach myself to the XP somewhat, because there are moments like this that tell you they can survive despite everything happening around them. It's going to be hell, and the odds are way against you, but if there's even a slim chance of getting them out of this, it makes you, or me, want to do everything you can to help them survive. It also makes each mistake hit much more because, at that point, and to an extent, it's your fault they got into that trouble. Sometimes. There are definitely moments where the game just has it out for you due to the level generation being kinda wonky, but that's just the nature of these kinds of games. Point is, there's a difference between something reveling in the suffering for the sake of it, and the suffering actually being a vessel for its theme. Or something. I don't know. Hi, I'm not a video game reviewer. I just like talking about video games. Let's actually go back to the game part of the game. Did you know there's a ragdoll button? I did. 20 hours in. It sounds worthless because it makes you as vulnerable as a fish out of water, but I like how it lets you squeeze through tighter gaps to save time on breaking blocks. It makes getting to those crates just a bit easier after cutting a hole through steel plating with a plasma cutter. Just be careful not to press the X key next to a cliff, or you might be eating some of your teeth with that dirt. Speaking of the boxes though, whenever you go to open one, you have to play this mini game to unlock it. Find the sweet spot and click on it until the lock turns all the way over. Hold it in the wrong spot for too long, you'll hurt yourself a bit. There's many games like this for all kinds of things, especially in the medical panel. If they step on some glass shards, you have to actually pull the shards out of their foot, or paw, and if you're too fast, it hurts more and makes it more difficult. Each minigame usually has some item you can use to make it easier, like using lockpicks to pick locks. Go figure. And using tweezers to pick out the shrapnel instead of your hands. I don't know how it's less painful with tweezers, but there's probably some logic to it. This game's usually pretty good with handling realism. in case you couldn't tell. Some might see these more as time wasters, but I think it adds a sense of pressure when you have to take your attention away from your surroundings to correctly type in a code or wrap a bandage around a bleeding limb. The stuff you can find in those pods and crates shouldn't be ignored anyway, since they often contain medicine and tools. Of course, there's always the possibility of the game just not giving you very good stuff sometimes. That's also just the nature of these games. In this case, you should consider crafting for your tools and such. Crafting is a very interesting conundrum in this game. It's definitely got a learning curve to it. It only looks complicated on the surface because the game doesn't really give you a tutorial on it until you make it to layer 3. Just remember this for starting out: glowfruit, scrap metal, and foliage. These 3 alone will help you make a lot of these recipes, since they're each prerequisite materials for other, much bigger recipes. For the scrap metal specifically, you need to combine each piece into a higher quality to use it. 90% is the gold standard. You can make foliage into wood scraps if you can't find any wood yourself, which can be made into these cubes for things like sticks and panels. You can also use foliage to make canvas and rope, which lets you make foliage bags, which let you carry more stuff. This is basically the first thing you should make when you start a run, because 6 inventory slots is extremely limiting. Also, you should make a material pouch. They're really good. Yeah, it can be annoying to look for these materials, but I found that it's often worth it. Crafting is such an unspoken power in this game, because if you're somewhat lucky and you know what to look for, you can make all kinds of things. You can make flashlights, helmets to protect your head, canteens for holding liquids, guns, ammo for said guns, medicine, batteries, Fent. It's definitely not a perfect system. Some recipes feel a bit overtuned, as in requiring very specific kinds of things in various quantities, but it's still pretty cool that the alternative to finding gear is just making it yourself. It won't always be as good as the stuff in the container sometimes, but having something adjacent to it is far better than not having it at all. You'd much rather dig through the rocks with a pickaxe that you made yourself than with your own bare hands. Claws. Your crafting ability is based on your intelligence stat. The higher it is, the more stuff you can make. You can increase it by reading the blueprints found in life pods or just making stuff you haven't crafted yet. It's a bit risky to try and make something that wants a higher int level than what you currently have, but sometimes that risk does pay off. In case you're wondering about the other 2 stats, strength increases your ability to hit things and somewhat increases carrying capacity. Resilience helps you tank damage better, both physical and psychological, and they'll both often be leveled on their own, whether that's from fighting monsters and digging through blocks or surviving extremely traumatic events. You can also train them directly through working out, just make sure they take a breather every so often. Speaking of the brain though, if there is anything you need to protect the most, protect your brain. You can lose an arm, an eye, your jaw, whatever. If your brain dies, you die. If your brain gets injured, even just a little bit, life becomes so much harder. Mentioned the seizures earlier, but at lower levels, the screen starts flipping. Your character starts hallucinating and has brain flashes. At even lower levels, they start dropping things from their hands and lose the ability to speak and read words. Brain damage is so debilitating in this game that it makes having brain grow a damn near requirement. Honestly, it may be a little too debilitating. I've had really good runs get thrown in the trash because I suffered just a little bit of brain damage. Maybe that's just realistic. Maybe I'm the fool for complaining about the overly punishing video game being overly punishing. On top of the crates, you'll also find these barrels laying around. They often contain a wide variety of liquids ranging from water to Limalgi to the 3 AM juice. Just make sure you're paying attention before you put something in your bottle that ruins everything. Why? Story time. In my early hours of this game, I, being the intelligent cat that I am, saw a barrel containing some refined juice, completely disregarded the other, much larger tooltip, drank it, and watched as my XP suffered ego damage. This is Mind Wipe. It completely erases your character's moral compass and sense of self while setting their intelligence stat to 0, basically making even the most simple recipes a toss-up on whether or not you'll succeed making them. Despite this horrible setback, we ventured on, taking care not to set off any landmines or get shot by any errant turrets laying about. And let me tell you, this kid was a fighter. He took a stalactite to the head, ate a concussion because I misjudged how velocity works, and they got some really good good gear to make up for losing their toolbox. They made it all the way to layer 5 before getting brutally mauled by an Elder Thornback and its 2 children. It was also my first time seeing an Elder Thornback, so that was an enlightening experience. Can't help but feel sudden overwhelming fear. It's always something having to hear the loud thumping of the heart rate monitor before the end of every run. Speaking of hearing though, holy shit, do not play this game if you have tinnitus. Or like, just turn it down really far when you get to layer 3. This game does that thing where your XP's ears will literally start ringing after something loud happens, like a turret going off or triggering a landmine, and it gets bad sometimes. Have you heard the sound cannon? I haven't, and that's because I can't hear anything even after it shot me. I wish there was an option to turn the ringing off or like disable it. Even a mod would work, because while I appreciate the push towards realism, I also don't want to go deaf with my XP. If you happen to know a way to disable the ringing, however, let me know. That way we can all know together and revel in the way that is not going deaf by 30. I think I would urge people to try this game at least once, just for the experience. It's currently in early access, and you can play the demo for free on Steam. I think it's also on itch. It definitely won't be for everyone, but to me it's such a fascinatingly brutal game that doesn't try to uphold its cruelty in a way that I consider sadistic or self-indulgent. It can definitely feel that way sometimes due to said cruel nature and randomness, but I wouldn't often say it was the game's fault for putting me in an unwinnable situation. Also, when I managed to calm down for my first run and locked in, so to speak, I actually started having fun. It's a survival game with the bells of a surprisingly deep medical system and involved gameplay mechanics, and the whistles of a dark, oppressive world with a tinge of hope on the horizon. If anything, it'll leave quite the impression, and I think that just shows how much of a unique experience it is. If you get through all the game's layers and decide you want more, try some of the harder modes. Desolate mode is basically everything about the base game made even harder. The ambient temperature can actually be life-threatening, survivors are less common, and you won't start with an emergency flashlight. Also, modifiers are guaranteed to appear on every layer. Have fun with this one. Unchipped mode is basically making you play the game without the health panel. The layer timer is non-existent, but most of the information, like internal bleeding, radiation, or early stage infection, won't be shown to you, so you better know what to do when you get hurt. I, however, am not what would be considered a professionally capable doctor. I don't even know how to do CPR. Also, word on the streets says that you might have to do this mode to get the good ending, but I don't know if that's confirmed. And if that's not enough, there's a modding community. My personal favorite was the very unstable multiplayer mod, which is self-explanatory. And I should stress as of writing this that it is very unstable, but it is fun. I mean, co-op already makes most games infinitely better. Look at Project Zomboid or Slay the Spire 2. Point is, it's neat and the game seems fairly mod-friendly. Even without mods though, I think the game's gonna get a lot more content in the future. Apparently like 8 more layers are supposed to be in the final game, and runs can already take a while. I'm curious to see where this goes from here, but as it is now, it's pretty fun. I just want to talk about it since this game caught my eye and it seems to be gaining some traction lately. Who knows, maybe this might encourage someone to try it, or maybe this will put someone off from it forever. But now that I've said my piece, I'm going to slink back into my air vent and disassociate for another month or two before I somehow make a video in the midst of my brain fog and upload it for the world to see. So, yeah, the video's over. What the fuck?
Radiation kind of sucks. Yeah, look.
They were all in my head. They were never real. I've somehow been by myself this whole time. Then... Oh!
We're probably gonna spawn with no items because the player IDs are kinda messed up, but that's okay.
Gravel lands. We have started a new run entirely. Okay, cool. Very cool.
I'll be honest, is it weird I don't actually want to start a new run and I'm okay with taking a break for today? I guess I'm gonna put the light bulb in my mouth.
Actually, can one of you activate the chip? I've always wanted to see what it looked like.
Oh, it's very tame actually.
Yeah, that's very tame. Some chocolate milk. Taste chocolate milk. You do not taste metal.